Hey everybody, this is Brian, and I have some exciting news for you today. In 2019, we plan to get rid of all irrelevant, tasteless, and annoying network advertising and replace it with messages from sponsors who matter to you. Network ads have already been removed from all site leaderboard banners. Our sponsorship program is by invitation only, and we require our sponsors to offer products and services that are related to one thing and one thing only: lightweight backpacking. Our site sponsorships will allow us to do some really cool things like create more podcast and video content. So with that, I just wanted to give a quick thanks to the first round of sponsors who are supporting Backpacking Light in 2019. REI, Hyperlight Mountain Gear, My Trail Co., Moans Peak 9, and Z-Packs. Thanks, guys. Okay, that's it. On with the podcast.
Welcome to the Backpacking Light Podcast, where we discuss the philosophy and skills of lightweight backcountry travel so that you can experience the outdoors with more comfort, safety, and enjoyment. I'm Andrew Marshall.
And I'm Ryan Jordan, and today's podcast is a skills short about winter backpacking.
So longtime listeners will know that this is the spot we usually put that nice folksy Backpacking Light theme song that always gets stuck in my head. The reason you aren't hearing it today is that we're introducing a new, shorter format podcast. So this format won't replace our long episodes. Instead, it's going to supplement them. So start looking for these new shorts in your podcast feed as we explore news, tech, gear, and skills.
Today's episode is a skills short where we'll discuss the philosophy and skills of lightweight winter backpacking. As we record this, there's a really big winter storm rolling across large parts of the United States, and a lot of you are getting ready to venture out into the snow.
So that made us think, how can we take the ultralight ethos and apply it to winter backpacking, a situation that usually requires more gear and a heavier pack?
That's right. And specifically, I think I want to talk about how to spend a couple of nights out in the winter with a very simple kit and a pack that weighs less than 15 pounds.
All right, so let's dig into it. Ryan, what do you have for us?
Well, I really want to focus on simplifying the gear kit as much as possible and as much as feasible. And the reason for that is when you're facing winter conditions and cold temperatures, keeping track of a lot of gear is a huge effort. And it's easy to lose stuff in the snow. And so when I actually go out in the winter, I like to simplify my gear kit as much as possible. So what I'm looking to discuss here is a collection of 10 items. I'm carrying more than 10 items here, but they're 10 items that serve very, very strategic functions for winter backpacking and camping. And my real goal is to make winter backpacking accessible to people and allow them to go out in cold, deep, snowy conditions with a pack that weighs 15 pounds or less and still allows them to be warm, safe, and comfortable. So let's kind of start with the item that we don't include in our base weight, which is what we're carrying or wearing, the clothing. So typically for winter conditions, I'm wearing base layers, long underwear, top and bottoms. You have some type of wind layer, a wind pant, and a wind jacket. Often a light insulating torso layer. It's usually a fleece or a very light puffy coats, and usually synthetic insulation. And then, of course, the usual accessories like hat, gloves, socks, your shoes or boots, gaiters. Sunglasses are critical in winter because of the reflection of the sun off the snow, and something to allow you to have traction or propel you in the snow, like snowshoes or skis, and of course trekking poles to aid stability and things like that. So that's the core of what I'm wearing, and that's the stuff that's most often not included in your pack. And I know you're shedding layers as the temperature changes and things like that, but let's start with that.
All right, so far that seems pretty self-explanatory.
So now let's dive into the rest of the kit. So take a backpack. You need to have something to carry all your stuff in. And so generally most lightweight backpacks are going to weigh in the range of 1 to 2 pounds. And this gives you enough volume and frame support if you need that to carry 15 or 20 pounds. You've got a sleeping bag that for winter conditions out here in the Rockies, it has to be near a temperature range of 0 degrees or so. And generally that is a mummy sleeping bag in the 2.5 to 3 pound range. You have a sleeping pad or a combination of a couple sleeping pads if you're sleeping directly on snow. That's usually going to cost you 1.5 pounds or so. Extra clothing, dry socks, rain gear, mittens, and a parka are the core essentials. And my winter kit there weighs about 2 pounds. And then for a shelter and cooking and food, this is where I really want to try to simplify things and tackle something that doesn't look like what most backpackers take in the winter. So let's talk about that kind of stuff.
Okay, so what most backpackers take is probably some sort of integrated stove system, like an MSR reactor system or something that's really powerful, has good performance in the cold, and can melt snow. So, what's your alternative philosophy?
Yeah, I think an integrated canister stove system is ideal for winter backpacking because it's so simple to use and it delivers hot water and melts snow very quickly and very efficiently. But we're going to leave that home in this scenario because I really like cooking on fire. And I think winter is the ideal time to take advantage of some fire building and fire cooking skills and leave the hassle and weight of a stove at home and experiment with some new things. So I'm a huge fan of fire building in the winter, and my fire kit at minimum consists of a magnesium fire starter. Optionally, if I know that fire is going to be a core component of my winter backcountry experience, I might throw in a very light hatchet for splitting wood and gathering firewood, a pair of leather gloves so that I can manage wood on the fire easily without burning my synthetic gloves or
Mm.
melting my synthetic gloves.
Yeah.
A folding saw. And I have a little one that weighs about 4 ounces. That is a great addition for gathering firewood. And then a durable knife so that I can baton wood and get dry kindling and things like that.
And we'll put links to your kit of choice in the show notes.
Yeah, sounds great. And so once I have fire, then I have a whole bunch of benefits. I have some companionship of the flame, which is psychologically, I think, really beneficial in the winter, especially during long, dark winter nights. And I have obviously a means of cooking. And once that fire's going in camp, it's a remarkably easy tool to use for cooking. I think people get really intimidated by it, but man, you can put a 2 or 3 or 4 liter pot on that fire, fill it with snow, and you have an endless supply of water fairly easily. And I know when we go group camping in the winter, we'll take a big pot, aluminum pot that's from a popcorn popping kit, and this pot weighs like 8 ounces, but holds more than a gallon of water, and it's the ideal um, cookware for cooking on a fire with a group. When I'm going solo, I will take a smaller pot, something probably in the 2 liter range. That gives me enough um, volume to melt snow and supply water for my own personal needs.
Right. The idea there being that the volume of snow is way more than how much water you're going to end up getting out of it.
Exactly. So if you consider all the things that are in my fire kit as well as my cooking pot, we're looking at maybe a pound and a half of gear, and huge benefit to your personal comfort and warmth, your psychology, and of course, it provides a tool for cooking.
Well, we're going to move along on to the next thing, but I would like to just make a note that maybe we need to do another skills podcast about actually fire starting in the winter, because I think there's a lot to dig into there.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a skill definitely worth practicing, not only for its practical benefits, but for safety as well.
Okay, what's the next thing on your list?
Well, let's talk about tents. What do you hear as conventional wisdom when it comes to winter tents?
You need something that's going to be robust, maybe with steep sides so you don't get a lot of snow loading. You don't want mesh.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of tents that are sold to backpackers that are so-called four-season tents, I mean, you're looking at 6, 8, 9 pounds for a two-person tent that meets these criteria. And I kind of go the complete opposite direction in the winter. I love forest camping in the winter mainly because it's very quiet. You're protected from blizzards and wind and things like this. And so I really, really like tarp camping in the winter. So here's an opportunity to save an enormous amount of weight. And the winter tarp I use is a 9x9 Dyneema composite fabrics tarp. And so between the tarp, tons of guy lines, and you don't need stakes because you can fashion stakes out of sticks and bury them as dead men in the snow. You're looking at a winter shelter that weighs a pound. And if there's wind, you can pitch a 9x9 down so three sides are protecting you from the wind, and one side's open where your fire's a few feet out in front of the shelter, which is a really nice feature as well. And here's a chance for you to save enormous amounts of weight and uh, tap into the skill of tarp camping in the winter. And I think honestly, winter is a great time to practice and implement a tarp camping style because there's no bugs, and it's just so quiet and peaceful out there, and that seems to me to be totally compatible with the tarp camping style.
Oh yeah, it's just there's nothing like camping in the woods in the wintertime when the snow's falling on you. It's so peaceful.
And so, beyond shelter, the only other thing I really have on my list is a flashlight because winter nights are long. So there's, 3, 4 ounces, and especially if you include extra batteries, you're not looking at a lot of weight there. And then, of course, food. And so for a 2-night trip, I'll pack about 3 pounds or so of food. I figure I've got 2 dinners, 2 breakfasts, and 2 or 3 lunches to pack, and it's all food that I can cook in one pot on my fire, or food that I can roast directly on the fire.
So what does that get your base weight down to?
So this results in a base weight of around 12 pounds or so, and then adding the food brings the pack weight up to about 15 pounds.
Yeah, 15 pounds, that gives you a lot of leeway to actually add extra things back into your kit if you needed to.
Yeah, so take there's some things missing on here that people are going to raise their eyebrows at. Like there's no water bottle. So I this is for a trip where I'm hiking short distances and focusing on winter camping. And so my needs for water are fairly limited to in camp, where I can boil it in my pot and drink it as I go or have tea or whatever. That said, once your fire building skill gets really good, you can build quick fires on the go while you're hiking that allow you to boil water pretty fast. So that's a philosophical choice. It's more for me. It's more like I want to see what I can get away with rather than take everything I need to be totally comfortable. Now, if I'm hiking longer distances, I will add back um, probably 2 liters of water capacity so that I don't have to fool around with a fire on the trail and things like that. But so this is a 15-pound kit. Let's add 5 pounds back to it and see what we could add. Well, we can add the water bottles. We can add an integrated canister stove system. So there's maybe a pound and a half for fuel in a stove there. You can add a pound or two and get a more robust shelter that can handle some wind and snow loading. So you're not strictly limited to below the tree line forest environment. And maybe insulated pants if the temperature is really cold out. So there's a half pound to maybe 12 ounces there. So even adding 5 pounds, you're still looking at a winter pack weight for a 2-night trip of 20 pounds or less, and gives you absolutely everything you need to be warm, dry, comfortable, and safe.
I think at this point, some listeners might take issue with the comfortable, especially if they're used to carrying, more like a 25, 30 pound pack in the winter with some more amenities. So what is the real point in minimizing your winter kit in this way?
Well, I'm going to defend the comfort argument because the reasons people are uncomfortable in the winter are primarily related to the fact that they're too cold. So I've got a 0 degree, or in my case, it's a 5 below rated sleeping bag. I've got a pound and a half winter parka. I've got puffy pants. I'm completely insulated from any cold and very, very comfortable, even in temperatures that are well below zero. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the comfort of the shelter. And again, tarp camping, I'm not going to take a tarp above the tree line in the winter and subject myself to blizzard conditions up there. That's not fun. That borders on uncomfortable. But for non-inclement weather, in a forest environment, I think a tarp is entirely fine. And again, I'm going to go back to the fact that I've got a tarp facing a warm fire, and I am enclosed in several pounds of down that are part of my kit, and it's a really glorious and comfortable way to camp. So if you can take care of your core needs of being warm, well fed, hydrated, etc., then it allows you to truly connect with the natural world outside. And so the simplification of your equipment and eliminating that as a barrier to have to fool around with all the time, I think allows you to focus on the experience. And in the winter, that experience is heightened because of the fact that it's so quiet. There's usually nobody else out there, and it's a cold, hostile environment that you're learning to connect to and live in. And I think that's really rewarding.
Yeah, and I would second that. One of the things that listeners might have picked up on is that there's no entertainment of any kind, no books, no podcast, anything like that on your list. And I would really challenge, if you've never spent more than one night out in the woods without any kind of external input, it can be really rewarding and also challenging in some ways, especially for our current oversaturated sort of media landscape.
It is an incredible exercise to leave your music player and your Kindle, even a book at home, and so that you're forced to just be there with your thoughts. It is very challenging, I will say that. Um, However, there's a barrier that you break through eventually, and your craving for entertainment kind of goes away, and you start to look up and see what's out there. And I never wanted to position the wilderness as entertainment, but when your need for consuming information and media is replaced by the natural environment, other things happen to your psychology, which I think are really healthy, and it has to do with meditation and heightening your senses to what's around you, and just appreciating what's out there. And so, if you're out there with another person, you can see this relationship kind of deepen. And if you're out there alone, you start to connect to the outside world in more meaningful ways. For me, it's a way to stimulate my creativity. So kind of stripping everything else out of the way allows my mind to like flourish, and I come up with new ideas, and I think about problems, and often come up with new ways of processing my own mental challenges. And so it's incredibly rewarding.
Yeah, it's that blank slate, it's that empty space.
Yeah, for sure. And then we have very little of that in our modern world.
Well, that's going to do it for this short episode of the BPL podcast. If you like what you've heard or you have suggestions for different segments, let us know at podcast@backpackinglight.com. You can download the show notes for this episode by visiting backpackinglight.com/podcast.
This podcast is available on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Leave us a review. It helps other people find the show.
Thanks for listening to the Backpacking Light podcast. I'm Andrew Marshall.
And I'm Ryan Jordan. And if we can leave you with one party message, it's this: pack less, be more, because lighter is better. Happy trails, everybody.